There's a problem with America's food system. It's not how much food we make, it's how much we end up throwing away. Pound for pound, more food goes into landfills across the country than any other single source of waste. The more food we throw away, the bigger the problem becomes.
You put food in a landfill, it creates methane gas, which is massively more potent than carbon dioxide in terms of climate change and greenhouse gases.
But more people are realizing all that food waste could be a valuable resource.
I mean, every farmer I work with is just so generous, and they would rather have their food feed people than even feed the chickens or compost it.
If we can just pull that stuff from our industrial sites and our grocery stores and also our school cafeterias, then we can pull that out of the landfill.
They're writing a recipe for change, so the food that's being thrown out doesn't all go to waste.
People are getting on board. People are wanting to know where their food comes from, and at the same point, they're saying, okay, where does it go?
There's more food available in the U.S. than ever before, but we're also throwing more food away. The amount of food Americans waste has been rising for decades, and that has serious environmental and economic consequences. We begin our food waste story at the end of the line, the landfill. You put it on the curb, it goes away, never to be seen again. Of course, it all goes somewhere. The good thing? It's taken away and you don't have to think about it or smell it again. The bad thing? If you don't have to think about it, you probably don't. But once you start digging into it, you find out what you throw away and where it goes does make a difference. There are those who do have your garbage on their minds. Jack Chappelle is one of them. He sorts garbage. States and cities hire Chappelle's consulting company to look through their trash and tell them what it's made of.
You want to know how long the landfill can last, what materials you can get out of it, what materials you can take out of the waste stream that makes the landfill last even longer.
Chappelle finds that a lot of what we throw away doesn't have to be. It could be recycled. Nationwide, more than 8 million tons of glass goes in the landfill, 24 million tons of cardboard and paper.
You still find an awful lot of bank statements and checks that people tear up, tin cans.
Then there's food.
In the country, you get more peelings, you get more vegetables. When you're in the city, you get a lot more fast food containers with half-eaten food in them, a lot more pizza boxes.
The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that nationally, about 20% of what goes into the landfill each year is food. Add all the food together from LA to New York, and America throws away nearly 35 million tons each year. 35 million tons. That's almost 100 Empire State Buildings made of food. Enough food goes uneaten in the United States in one day to feed the Denver metro area for 10 weeks. More than 2 million people could eat from New Year's to St. Patrick's Day.
We just have so much abundance of food that we don't realize the value of it.
Dan Nickey from the Iowa Waste Reduction Center works with businesses to cut back on what they throw away, including food. Nickey says waste happens at every level of the food chain.
You have food that is in warehouses that expires and they throw it away. Maybe they made a mistake and it doesn't have quite the flavoring they want. They don't want to sell it, so they throw it away. I think it's part of the culture today that compared to when our parents grew up, that, you know, now we don't look as food necessarily as a resource. We just look as a given.
From farmers to consumers, fruits and vegetables make up a third of the food loss in the U.S. Dairy products cover another 20% of what goes uneaten. When you look at the amount of food going unused, the costs add up, environmentally and financially. First, let's look at the money.
40% of all the food in this country never makes it to the table, at a cost of $165 billion.
And that's just in the U.S. Globally, food losses add up to $750 billion. Behind those dollar signs is a significant environmental threat when food is buried in a landfill.
You're going to have a generation of methane gas. Methane gas is a greenhouse gas, which is a contributor to global warming.
As a greenhouse gas, methane is 20 to 25 times stronger than just carbon dioxide. One thing landfills are able to do is capture the methane before it escapes into the atmosphere. It's happening at hundreds of landfills across the country. The landfill in Lincoln, Nebraska started collecting methane gas in 2013 and sending it here to a generating station where the gas is now burned to make energy.
That pipe comes from the landfill. The landfill is located about 1.5 miles west of us. So after the gas gets processed and cleaned, then we compress it, we send it through the pipeline underground into the building and then into the engine. The average Nebraska home uses 1,000 kilowatt hours per month. And so in an hour, we can supply enough energy to run 3,200 typical Nebraska homes.
3,200 homes powered by gas from food and other organic waste. For Dan Nickey, that kind of system may be a good backup for food that's already underground, but it's not the solution to the problem, because food is still taking up valuable landfill space. And he says there are better things to do with the food we don't eat.
We need to stop thinking of it as waste, okay? Even though it's maybe not used for its intended purpose, it's still not a waste because it still has value. It's only a waste if we put it in a landfill.
And that's the last place he says it should go. Why does so much food go to waste? One reason might be that it's so affordable, it's considered disposable. Americans spend about 10% of their disposable income on food, a small percentage compared to other countries. But it's not that way for everyone. 49 million Americans sometimes have trouble putting food on the table. Much of what's currently being wasted could be used to feed families. Randy Mason introduces us to some people hungry to help make that happen.
You can just spread out all the way to the end and people can have their own little patch.
On a mild Saturday morning in June, a team of volunteers arrives at this small farm in Kansas City, Kansas, ready to glean. That is, gather the unharvested lettuce and other crops that might otherwise never be picked and waste away in the fields.
And if you fill your bags to the top, but you can tie it shut, that'll be 3 pounds. So this is like 3 pounds right here.
Another day, it could be a cornfield near Baldwin City.
Gleaning is biblical, thousands of years old, so we're getting back to some of the basics. Wow, well, yeah.
Or
absolutely.
Maybe a patch of beets and greens in Platte City, Missouri.
When we're gleaning, they'll say, okay, you can have this row here, and we take everything. And it's after they're done selling that crop. So it could be the mustard is close to bolting or it has bolted. I mean, every farmer I work with is just so generous, and they would rather have their food feed people than even feed the chickens or compost it.
Okay, go ahead. We started with a nonprofit called Society of St. Andrew. I actually opened that office in 2008, and over the next 6 years, we salvaged more than 15 million pounds of food to feed people. 15 million pounds.
Though Owsley might on occasion secure a donation of potatoes or some other crop by the semi-load, the bulk of what they collect still comes the old-fashioned way, one fruit or vegetable at a time. Food that's been left behind, largely because of aesthetics.
We've been to farms where they have squash. They're this big, but that's too big to go on the grocery store shelf, so you go and pick everything that's ugly or blemished, or still great edible food.
I don't care what it is, whether it's a strawberry or a beet or a piece of mustard right out of the ground. It's so good.
And nutritionally good for the most food insecure portion of our population as well.
When people do food drives, they're getting cans and boxes and not fresh produce. And, everybody loves fresh produce. And to me, that just completes the whole fun cycle of this.
Even crops that make it out of the field don't all make it to consumers. Farmers markets like this one on the square in Fayetteville, Arkansas, showcase lots of great locally grown produce. But by Saturday night, much of what hasn't been sold may well be tossed out. A troubling thought when you consider 1 in 6 Americans may be underfed. Don Bennett's Tricycle Farms is one of several grassroots groups in Fayetteville determined to take an active role in dumpster diversion.
We do our part in our neighborhood and it distributes close to about 300 to 400 pounds of food each Sunday.
And at the University of Arkansas, another aspect of food waste is being addressed: leftovers from restaurants and cafeterias. It is, in a sense, another kind of gleaning program. 5 days a week, a student group called Razorback Recovery is saving salads, sandwiches, and baked goods from dining halls, retail sites, and events on campus, and taking them to Fayetteville food pantries.
You know, the food's already there. It's already, made to the right standards and kept at the appropriate temperature. And so instead of it being pitched into the dumpster, they just put it in our fridge and we take it out to the agencies who need it.
The school's food service provider had some serious concerns about liability. What if their leftovers were mishandled and someone became ill? Nicole Civita, a faculty member at the university's food law program, says that is a common concern, but one that was largely laid to rest by a federal law passed in 1996.
The Bill Emerson Act does a very good job of balancing food safety interests and food recovery interests.
In a nutshell, the Emerson Act exempts those who donate apparently wholesome food in good faith from being sued as long as the food goes to a qualified nonprofit that feeds the hungry. Years after the law was passed, many are still unaware it exists. That led Civita to create a food recovery guide.
As soon as we published it, my phone started ringing on a regular basis with inquiries from people all over the country who wanted to promote food recovery and were glad to have a tool that they could use to go to a business and say, I know you're afraid of this, I know you think you're going to get sued, but here's how we do it in a way that protects you.
Which leads to the kind of place where most of us get most of our food. The kind of place where 40% of what starts out fresh ends up getting thrown out, though much of it is still edible. Grocery chains across the country are looking at ways to knock that number down. A pilot program at this Harp store in Fayetteville began setting aside and sharing food that can no longer be sold, but can still be eaten.
Takes just as much time as it would to actually put it in there and go dump it as it would go through the table. Same amount of time. One's actually helping somebody and one's not.
Our goal is to be proactive and see if we can shrink that 40%, one store at a time, and then once we get our systems together, be able to scale it up in a way that truly makes an impact. We want everybody who's involved in this program to be like, why wouldn't we do this?
By recovering the food that's not sold and gleaning the food that's not harvested, food gets a second chance to do what it does best: feed people.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
If food can't reach people, it doesn't have to be destined for the landfill. Even though composting leaves and grass clippings is commonplace, composting food isn't. Only 5% of food waste headed for the landfill is diverted for composting.
A lot of communities now have these bins where you can throw your leaves and sticks in, right? What's happening to that stuff? Composting. Why can't we throw our food waste in those same bins? Another solution for the homeowner instead of throwing it in the trash.
Just a handful of communities collect food scraps, but Ryan Robertson found those scraps can be a valuable resource, and there are people out there finding ways to put food waste to work.
Food waste is more than just the leftovers people toss out. There's waste in the creation of food as well. Some companies have found ways to reuse and recycle that waste. Take Prairieland Dairy. There's a lot of manure coming from their 1,400 cows, but that manure, combined with waste from another Nebraska food manufacturer, makes good compost. Prairieland diverts about 2,000 tons of food waste from the county landfill every year for composting. A substantial amount for an operation of this size, but not much compared to the 35 million tons of food waste that goes to landfills nationally. But diverting that food fits with their motto: don't waste anything.
And the cow gives us our 3 M's, milk, meat, and manure, so we take advantage of all 3 of them.
That third M, manure, is why Prairieland started its composting program. It's the byproduct of dairy production, another kind of food waste. Composting speeds up the natural process of the breakdown and decay of organic materials. With time and a little maintenance, a nutrient-rich material is made, perfect for yards and gardens. But it takes more than manure to make good compost, which is why Prairieland adds yard and food waste to the mix.
We found out that about 85% of the stuff that goes to the landfill is compostable. So if we can just pull that stuff from our industrial sites and our grocery stores and also our school cafeterias, then we can pull that out of the landfill and reduce the landfill fill up by 85%.
To divert food from the landfill, Prairieland is partnering with one of the nation's largest food manufacturers, Conagra Foods, based in Omaha. At Conagra's Crunch and Munch popcorn facility in Lincoln, the kernels that don't pop up quite right, the old maids, are separated out and sent to the dairy's compost piles.
In a manufacturing environment, there are always going to be a certain level of losses, yield losses, or incidents of failure that are going to generate waste.
Gail Tavel is the Vice President of Sustainability at Conagra. Her job includes finding where the company is wasteful and trimming the fat.
When we set our goal, it was to divert at least 75% of materials from landfill. Today we're over 90 across the board, and we have a handful of facilities that actually don't fill landfill anything. We segregate those out, put a for donation only label on them.
Tavel says Conagra has partnerships with organizations all over the country to recycle food waste, or what she now refers to as byproducts. In a Conagra tomato processing plant in California, seeds and skins are being turned into highly nutritious feed for animals. Even the water in the tomato, which makes up about 80% of the fruit, is also extracted and used for irrigation in nearby fields.
It just makes sense to, recirculate that water versus having it go out of the stack in terms of steam. So it just makes sense to capture water, especially in a state that is prone to drought.
But every operation produces some waste. After all, some things just can't be eaten. Research engineer Ivan Cornejo at the Colorado School of Mines is finding different ways to utilize food waste.
The process starts by collecting food wastes from different sources. And then what we do with this, we process to extract the minerals.
Cornejo has a big idea to reduce food down to its building blocks, but he's not making compost.
I started working in the ceramic group, and then I started working more on the trash to glass concept.
You heard that right. Cornejo and his colleagues are turning trash into glass. Cornejo led the team that created Gorilla Glass, the material used to make the screen on your smartphone. And now, from his lab in Colorado, Cornejo is looking to organic waste as the mining operation of the future.
You find significant amount of silica or silicon sources from things like wheat, rice husk.
Once the food waste is reduced to minerals, Cornejo mixes the ingredients for glass and superheats them in a ceramic crucible. The process isn't ready for industrial scale, but in the lab, Cornejo can make glass with more clarity and purity than most sold on the market today. It may seem far-fetched, but Cornejo says it could be that kind of innovation that inspires the next generation.
We went to Colorado School of Mines to visit a professor named Dr. Cornejo, and he takes these food wastes and turns them into glass, and so we were helping him out by collecting these for him.
The new generation has a much better philosophy on sustainability that we have. When I was a kid, sustainability was not an issue. They find this like a very weird thing, but yet they find this very easy to understand. I think this could be the spark that is needed to revitalize the glass science and the ceramic science in this country.
Whether it's composting or mining for minerals, Cornejo says he's looking forward to the day when repurposing food waste is second nature.
Cutting back on food waste means changing people's habits. That's one thing they've learned at the University of Iowa hospitals, where they serve an average of 10,000 meals per day. Food scraps and compostable packages are separated and sent to the city compost pile. Leftovers are shared with a local food bank. It's working, but it takes extra time and effort.
It's like saying you want to eat healthy. It takes extra work, it takes some thought, it takes some planning. Same thing with reducing food waste, not choosing more than what you can eat, bringing your products back down to compost them. It's just a daily habit. I think people want to do it, most people do it, the other people are working on it.
If a hospital can change the way it thinks about food, maybe it's possible to make changes closer to home. One family is taking a new look at what they eat and what they throw away.
Now, you want to dump in the beans?
The Erkel family does a lot of cooking at home. They try to be careful about what they eat, but they also watch what they don't eat.
My name is Sherri Erkel, my husband Kyle, and our daughter Asa. She's 5.5, so she'll be starting kindergarten. We live with Kyle's parents, Pat and Joyce Erkel.
The Erkels are food waste guinea pigs. They're one of around 50 families recruited to measure food waste. It's part of a study being done by Iowa City's recycling department with the Environmental Protection Agency. Recently, each of the families added a new gadget in the kitchen to track how much food they throw away. Sherri Erkel has a special name for it.
Oh yeah, you can, then it'll make more.
The green bucket of judgment.
Every single thing that is anything that had to do with food or could be food, so even like bones, everything, because you're putting non-edible and edible, and you throw it in the bucket. And so then at the end of the week, you have to weigh it, and so we have you take your scale.
Estimates vary, but the average American family tosses out anywhere from 15 to 25% of the food they buy. That adds up to around $1,500 to $2,500 per year, based on what the average family of 4 spends on food.
So that's just like food on our plate that we didn't eat. So we've thrown away 4 pounds of food in 2 days. So, judgment.
They're seeing it pile up, they're seeing it collect, and at the end of the week, they're seeing how much they actually produced.
Jane Wilch is leading the study in Iowa City. She says it's eye-opening for families to actually see what they've thrown away.
So I think that's a really good mechanism to bring about that consciousness about food waste, because they're seeing themselves produce it, which I don't think that existed prior to this.
Want to help me, Asa?
At the end of the study, the families will turn in data showing how much food went unused. In the meantime, they're looking for ways to cut back on what goes in the bucket. A few basic tips can help anyone reduce food waste. Plan out what you're going to eat. Make a shopping list and stick to it. Use the food you bring home, and eat your oldest food first. The Erkels now plan every meal in advance. It's on a calendar for everyone to see. To stay on schedule, they prepare food ahead of time and use the freezer to store meals for the week.
Kyle grilled a bunch of meat on Sunday for the week. So we put it in the freezer and then we just pulled it out today, and so now we're gonna make fajitas tonight. Peppers we freeze too, because otherwise we forget about them. They get rotten in the middle. So we just chop up a bunch at once and then use them for everything.
There's also a special spot in the fridge for food that's about to go bad and needs to be eaten.
I boiled some eggs to eat because those are quick protein for like on your way to work. And then last night we didn't eat all of our broccoli, so like Ace didn't eat all of our broccoli. And so we put it here, but instead of like in a container where I can't see it, where it'll get shoved to the back, I put it in open, and so it's down there, so I know, like, okay, I'm gonna put that in my lunch tomorrow because I don't want it to go to waste.
For food to last as long as possible in the refrigerator, learn about the labels you see at the grocery store. Confusion about labels is one reason food ends up in the garbage. When you see a date on a food container, you might think of it as a deadline. But food scientist Harshvardhan Tippereddy says best by, use by, and sell by dates are added voluntarily by food processors. They estimate a food's shelf life, that is, how long the lettuce will be crisp, or how long before the milk begins to sour.
The producers put that label on there to provide the best eating experience for that product, not because of safety issues beyond that time period.
Many people think the dates show how long the food is safe to eat and throw out good food just to be on the safe side. But Tippereddy says only one food is required by law to carry a date for safety: baby formula. Otherwise, if you're happy with how food tastes, Tippereddy says you shouldn't throw it out just because of the date on the package. The old saying, when in doubt, throw it out, can be wasteful advice.
If you know how you refrigerated the product or kept the product, you can use it for until that time period or maybe beyond that time period, because all those use by, sell by dates are for shelf life, not for safety.
What it all boils down to is buying what you need and eating what you buy. It may be new advice for recent generations, but it used to be part of the culture, even part of the war effort during both world wars. Joyce Erkel was born during the Great Depression. She says saving food was part of growing up.
Well, when I was a kid, you recycled. You know, your parents didn't throw away anything. Your coffee grounds went in the yard to help with worms, you know, if you wanted to go fishing.
We really learned a lot from his parents, and another thing they do, like Joyce always eats with a smaller plate, so you're gonna fill whatever plate you have, so using a smaller plate, then you're less likely to waste.
I never throw away food, never. If I have corn or green beans or peas, or I keep it and use it in a soup. It's just a habit, you know, and it's a good habit.
And when it comes to food, it pays to have good habits, because wasted food is really wasted money. Food waste is piling up. Millions of tons go into our landfills and put off harmful greenhouse gases. But more people are looking for ways to take a bite out of the problem.
It's not a waste if we find a responsible alternative method for its use.
And if it's being diverted to animal feed or composting or some other higher value than landfill, it's really not being wasted anymore.
Rather than go to waste, food could become a kind of natural resource. Leftover food could be mined for minerals or added back to the soil it came from.
The greener idea is coming around, so we believe that we're going to get a lot more companies that are wanting to send their stuff to the compost site rather than to the landfill.
Even though farmers are growing more food, we're also throwing more away, while millions in the United States go hungry.
Waste is recognized in the produce industry as just a part of the business. And while there is going to be some waste, we can help prevent a lot of that waste. Why waste perfectly good food just because no one wants to bend over and pick it up?
Too much food that families buy ends up in the garbage. Making the most of food at home cuts back on waste and perhaps even grocery bills.
Planning your menus, prepping more food at home ahead of time, like the more you take care of your food on the front end, the less likely it'll be to waste it.
It's in part getting people to find the love for the leftovers, and that there's a difference between food that maybe looks a little shabby and food that is unsafe.
In the end, food is worth too much just to toss it out, and the more people realize that, the less it will go to waste.